Jack, and this video is 5 ways to improve your communication skills. Before we get into them, let's ask this question. Why is it important to improve your communication skills? Well, you probably already know that we are deeply linguistic beings. So what we communicate internally to ourselves and externally to other people has a massive impact on what our experience is, on what we think is possible, and in the realm of relationships, it really determines the quality of intimacy and connection that we can experience with other people. So this is deeply important territory, whether you want a better relationship, a better career, or just to feel more seen and understood, or that you more see and understand other people. So let's get to it. Principle number 1 is called don't reload. Don't reload. And what that means is when you're in a conversation with someone else, when they're speaking, don't be planning what you're going to say next. Now, this takes some courage. It takes some presence. It takes being okay with not being ahead of yourself. But the reason to learn to do this is because it actually keeps you more connected to what the other person is saying. And it allows what that person is saying to land within you, to make an impression or impact on you. If you don't do that, you kind of create a sort of non sequitur in conversations, or someone's telling you about when their cat died, and actually what you need to pick up on is this is an emotional experience for them. This is something that they feel sad about and that they're in a grieving process. But if you're ahead of yourself reloading, you might be thinking cats, cats, cats. Oh yeah, I remember I had a cat when I'm a kid, and you start telling some anecdote and it's not really connected and attuned to where the other person's at. So notice if you do this. Notice if you get ahead of yourself in conversations. Now, if you're out networking and there's a certain kind of networking persona that you're occupying where you kind of need to show up in a certain way or you need to have things to say, it might be that you need to do some reloading. But I'm talking about in situations where you actually want to create a quality connection with someone that you care about, someone that's meaningful, a friend, lover, co-worker, that you might want to learn how to be present to them and not reloading. Okay, principle number 2 will help you with this. Become more comfortable with pauses. Become more comfortable with pauses. One of the reasons to do this is because the more okay you are, if there's actually some space and some pausing in the conversation, the easier it will be not to reload. Because the reason a lot of people reload is also because they feel uncomfortable when there's a space between the other person speaking and you're replying. I want to suggest to you that you might want to become more familiar with that space because there's some real gold and magic that can happen in that space. Partly because you can actually notice what is happening in you in response to what the other person's saying. And you might start to learn how to include that, how to include noticings about the impact the other person is having on you. It also tends to take the pressure off yourself. Like if you want to really learn how to relax in life, and part of relaxing is relaxing with other people, you may find that if you can be comfortable being in silence, even momentarily with another person, you feel less shy, you feel less awkward, and you feel more yourself, rather than a kind of internal fear speeding you up and keeping you talking. You probably have had that experience where you're saying something to someone, but you're not really connected to it because it's coming from fear. It's coming from social anxiety. And I'm not to say that, this will take away all social anxiety, just that the more you become comfortable with yourself, it's a bit like you're more comfortable in your own skin. You're more comfortable being in your own time. And maybe you're a super fast-paced talker and you love the chit. Maybe you're a New Yorker or something, or a Londoner, and that's how you go. And if that's really true, that's your really true native way of communicating, that's totally okay. And you might also want to try on what's it like just to let things land, let things impact you, let things be received by you, so you actually receive the communication, right? The communication from someone isn't only the words they're saying, it's also the emotion and energy and the sort of wholeness of everything they're communicating, right? We sometimes call that the sub-communication. Something's being said in words, but actually what you pick up on is, oh, this person's quite anxious about this, or this person is quite angry about this. That's really useful for you to be able to pay attention to. All right, principle number 3 is own your experience. Own your experience. And what this means is when you're having a conversation with someone or you're in connection with someone, own what's going on your side of the fence, right? If you're feeling a particular emotion, maybe you're feeling sad, maybe you're feeling angry, maybe you're feeling disappointed. What's it like to own your experience, that that's your experience and it doesn't have to be their experience, right? So it's possible for two people in the same conversation to have two different experiences. And it's also possible that they're not responsible for your experience. So as you start to wake up to this, you'll notice language like, you made me angry, makes less sense to you. That you might notice that you got angry in response to someone else, and that there's some element of choice or responsiveness that is on your side of the fence. That it's actually hard to definitively make someone angry, that there's normally some kind of reaction, story, interpretation that's also going on. Not all the time, but most of the time. And I want you to be open to seeing what it's like, that if you own your experience, you actually get more freedom in conversation, more freedom to be yourself. You don't have to be a particular way. You don't have to be in a particular idealized way, like I should show up all enthusiastic, or I should show up completely calm and centered. You can actually be wherever you are, right? Whatever experience life is bringing you, you're more okay with it. You don't have to hide it. You don't have to pretend that it's not happening. And you free other people up to be themselves, because they're no longer responsible for what it is that you're experiencing. So now we can have two adults in the room having a conversation that's not overreaching, that's not some covert contract where I'm responsible for your experience and you're responsible for mine. We're actually both taking some responsibility for our own experience. If you've never practiced this, I'd love to encourage you to, because it creates more realness, more authenticity, more ability to be yourself. All right, principle number 4, which kind of supports principle 3. Principle number 4 is don't subjectify. And you may not have come across this term. I certainly hadn't until about 5 years ago. Don't subjectify means don't make someone as if they are you, right? You are subject. So when you subjectify someone, you imagine that they are thinking, feeling, acting, interpreting, making meaning in the same ways that you are. And I got some news for you. Humans are more different than you might imagine. Obviously, we have huge amounts of similarities, but when it comes to what our actual experience is and the meaning we make from it and the things that connects to in our past that make that a likely meaning for us, we have huge variation. So one of the things that you can do to improve your communication is to not imagine that the person in front of you is you, right? If someone turns up 5 minutes late and you're someone that's super punctual, you may make a particular interpretation out of that, like maybe they're disrespecting you. That may or may not be true. What I want to encourage is for you to have some curiosity about their experience, curiosity about what's going on, not just imagining, well, if I was angry with someone in that way, it would be because of this. No, you want to actually find out what is going on over there, because otherwise you're living in your own kind of fantasy interpretation and you're making things mean things. You're getting yourself upset, you're getting yourself heated, or you're living within a story that actually isn't the truth, and it's limiting you. Right? The less story, the fewer beliefs, the less interpretation that we have, generally the freer we are. So what would it be like if you could be with someone and imagine, oh, they're doing a thing and I have no idea why, but you know what? I'm going to get curious and I'm going to find out why they're doing that thing. There's all sorts of social cues that we ourselves take on that it might not be true that someone else has. So if you at a party and you don't go and say hello to someone you know, in your world that might be because there's something wrong, right? That you're actually avoiding them, you're ignoring them, maybe there's something you haven't cleared with them. For someone else, it might be that if they're not feeling super social, they don't actually go and say hello to someone even if they know them. That's just not the space they're in. So you could be having the same behavior, but for very different reasons. So this just kind of frees up the whole script. And by the way, where this is really powerful is in intimate relationships. Because if you've gotten into the minutiae, into the detail of how people make meaning and interpretation, you'll know that we make meaning and interpretation in very different ways. So before you jump to some conclusion about why someone is doing something, and I hold my hand up, sometimes I'm not good at this, it can be really useful to slow it down and invite someone to reveal what was the intention, what was actually going on, or what has been the reaction that's happening inside them. Principle number 5 is a little different. Principle number 5 is be a thinker and a feeler. And what I mean by this is most of us tend to be more one than the other. right? We tend to be more of a thinker or more of a feeler. Thinkers tend to care about rules, consistency, logic, getting things done, consistency of expectations. So they're kind of like tend to go more by the book and by how things should be done, and they tend to have more attention on the task. Feelers tend to be more oriented to people. They tend to be more likely to make special exceptions for people because they know a particular thing. Like maybe if you have a refund deadline, as someone as a thinker, you might be like, well, the deadline's the deadline, and if you pass it, you pass it. As a feeler, you might be like, oh, but this person, had a problem, they couldn't get into the house, so I'm actually going to include that. They lost their keys, I'm going to include that. Feelers tend to be more attuned to the feeling in the situation. What do I feel? What do you feel? Tend to be a bit more over there with other people. And all of these things can be skills. The more you're able to play on both sides of these fences, the more you can actually both get things done and stay in good connection and relationship with people. It's sort of like making the task and the people or the way the task happens both important. And it gives you more flexibility. If you're only aligned to one side of the polarity, you're kind of seeing the world in a certain way, and at least 50% of the world aren't orienting in that reality, so you're less likely to communicate in a way that works well for them. So part of this is the more flexible you are in your communication scripts, the more able you are to meet people where they're at, and actually, underneath it, value the things that they are valuing. If you're a thinker, you probably don't really get how feelers operate. You kind of like maybe see them as overly sensitive, overly emotional, inconsistent, and you might miss the real value that they have in that they are willing to navigate and be flexible to the person in front of them, right? Generally, great customer service can happen from people who are feelers because they get like, oh, people have different experiences and I need to treat them differently. So principle number 5 is become a thinker and a feeler. All right, there's a lot in this. Questions and comments welcome. Please like this video if you've stayed this far, and I would love for you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't. I'm releasing at least one video a week on personal growth and development and topics to do with love and relationships. So thanks for being here with me. I'll see you soon.